Session today, and allow me to first of all introduce my CEO, that is Victoria, the CEO of Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, who will start us off with an opening remarks. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Giles, and hi everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. I'm so excited that we actually are having a webinar to speak about something that Giles has said has been at the table for the longest time. But when you're talking about a particular specific group that continue to be left behind, the conversation doesn't get old. We just continue to advance it in a way that actually continues to be meaningful and gets really to see us shifting our practices and our systems and processes for the benefit of women, for the benefit of youth, and they get to also realize the potential that they have. Across many, many countries in the sub-Sahara today, private sector is really that, how do I put this? Like it really is the one that holds that opportunity for the women, for the youth, as far as expanding income opportunities, as far as diversifying livelihoods. And so there is no better place to have the conversation around inclusive business models, except really in a forum where we have private sector experts, we have investors, we have businesses that have actually determined that they are going to challenge themselves to advance inclusivity in a different way. It's really interesting as I thought about today, I thought about all of the words that we all hear thrown around, gender integrated, gender specific, gender transformative. And I know we ask ourselves, what does it really mean when we talk about gender specific, gender integrated, gender transformative, or, you know, and how are we advancing our businesses? But then another word came to my mind actually, and I thought, maybe we should start talking about gender intentional, you know, where actually is no longer about we are talking about how to include women and how to include youth further and writing it in articles, but every one of us is actually questioning their own intentions and motives on an everyday basis and being intentional at that individual level, because it is that intentionality on us, those of us who are today running businesses, that actually will be able to move the needle. It is not about AECF or Criterion coming to give us a tool that indeed helps us and it will support our intentions, but it is starting with, but I am committed, but I'm truly actually interested in getting to see women, not only as beneficiaries of training, not only as the people who are accessing products and services and a targeted customer segment, but really as people who will be decision makers in my company, as persons who will access the capital as much as the men are accessing the capital, as persons who will actually have access to productive assets, because in them accessing productive assets, they are able to access credit, they are able to have control over the decisions that they make. And it really starts from that intentionality. I wanted to actually share just a bit about our journey as an organization. So we've been here from 2008 as an organization, surfacing innovative business models that are oriented towards the poor, thinking of how we extend opportunity for persons who are living in marginalized places, fragile contexts, and really thinking about how we surface that private sector that has the potential to scale, but struggles to access capital from commercial financiers. And initially, that's all we did. We provided capital and we said, hey, go on and do the best that you can, and let's get to see how you access commercial capital subsequent to the AECF support. But then in 2014, we started challenging ourselves and saying, what does really actually having true impact in the continent look like? And we started with very minimal effort of just adjusting a budget to be able to support businesses to better understand how to include women in their operations, in their processes, in working with, whether it is outgrowers on one hand, suppliers, or distributors on one hand, a very small component of a program budget. In 2018, we worked with Criterion to specifically look at what does gender lens investing look like? What does gender transformative business models look like? What does value chains that are most empowering of women actually look like? And how do we go out as an organization to have very good structures and systems that support the ambition that we have, which is to see more women increasing incomes, which is to see more women accessing capital, see more women in decision-making roles as leaders. We then actually went out and started a window, which was investing in women in window, which actually did not pick up very interestingly, but it was the first time we went to the market and we said, we want businesses that are economically empowering of women, businesses that are women-led and women-owned, and we want to see how we actually create opportunities for the women of Sub-Saharan Africa together. It did not get off the ground for many reasons, but the lessons that came from that actually has allowed us to go ahead and within our other programs, building intentionality in investing in women-led businesses and encouraging other businesses to actually better work on creating the opportunity for women. And so far, we actually not only invested in businesses that are creating employment, partnering with women as suppliers and distributors, we even went and integrated into our model strategies that actually we know will work better to move women from marginalized activities of whatever sector or whatever value chain. And guess what that included? It included working with microfinance institutions on products and services that can better be accessed by women, because again, the market just had, in many instances, whether it is Somalia, Zimbabwe, or Gambia, very vanilla products. And in Gambia, we actually worked with Reliance Financial Services to work with just specifically women traders and advance them credit. Many years later, there are 5 financial services companies in Gambia that are specifically targeting women with their products. And it just took actually thinking of how will women better participate in the financial system if there are no products and services that really actually attend to how they respond to information, right? They don't just walk to the bank. You need to go and make a product seem like it really is attending to how they work. And it is in their savings groups. It is in their small micro credit arrangements that they have at the community level. But now in 2020 to 2023, we have been working on very specifically targeted programs that are advancing the agenda of financing women-owned businesses. And our Investing in Women programs, totaling about $43 million, are looking at all of you, the women in business who are boldly showing up and choosing to run your companies, choosing to design strategies that really will change your communities in products, in services, in enhancing their livelihoods. And I'm excited, actually. This year, we have onboarded for the first time a women-only portfolio. In a lot of portfolios that you all are, some of you are joining this meeting, you're with male-owned businesses. But this year, under Investing in Women in the Blue Economy, we have a portfolio of just women-owned businesses. But why is this important? It is because we think that there are different strategies. There is how we include women as employees. There's how we include women in terms of suppliers and distributors, how we include them actually as just people who receive information that's useful for them to go and build resilience. But there is something very different when you place that capital in the hands of a woman in business and get to trust them to be able to drive the strategy of their business, support them with technical advisory, and they shortly will be able to raise commercial capital. I am very proud to see our investees participate in this webinar, because even as we stand up as the ACF and say, we really want to see that the interests of women and youth are considered is in investment. We cannot do it in the absence of business owners who are willing to step up and walk that journey. we cannot be able to make a move. And just thanking Leila of Solarland, and your boldness, Leila, to work in a sector that is very male-dominated, renewable energy sector. The fact that you go up those towers in your mini grid stations and work very directly with communities is something we all look up to and admire, and it encourages us to really continue to push for investment, to go into women-led and women-owned businesses. In Komoko and Koto are here represented by Lisa and Sarah. And these are businesses that are working directly with women as far as microcredit is concerned, and also as far as accessing products and services, clean energy products and services. Again, it is only the boldness of the leaders that are right on the ground, pushing these products and services, rethinking their strategies, that is going to help us to move the needle forward. We have experts that are joining us today in this webinar, and I just want to thank them, and I hope that we will learn from them. And the institutions that they represent have been at the forefront on pushing for gender transformation in how we approach investment, from Grasa Machel to Criterion Institute and the African Development Bank. I do look forward to learning from them. I hope you've come here waiting to learn, and together we can be able to see policy changes and male engagement in how we advance business and inclusion of women, that we'll be able to see the number of women decision makers increase. We'll be able to see, in the wake of climate crisis, which is really burdening women, more women accessing climate solutions, that we will be able to see more women accessing commercial financing, more of them accessing productive assets, more of them in leadership position, and really seeing more and more formal small businesses that are owned by women. We cannot know this if the experts that have been in the trenches, they have looked at business models, they have looked at financing models, they have known what has worked, what hasn't worked, do not show up to share with us. But today they are showing up to share with us. Ours is just to learn, take on, and reshape our own orientation, our own strategies to advance the interest of women and youth in the contexts that we have. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the conversation this afternoon.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria. I just admire what imaginations goes on in your head, when you started and just talked about, us being more intentional, you just being able to imagine how the future really looks like, especially for women in business, and just the intentionality and the ambition of just ensuring that we are able to really contribute to this global agenda. Thank you so much. You are welcome to stay in and listen to the rest of the conversation. We are now going to listen to various investees. And now the big question remains, as we listen to them, I think the big question that we should always be asking ourselves, are we mainstreaming gender? Are we incorporating women in our business because of the products and the services that we are offering? Or is it truly a belief that there's need for us to be more inclusive, there's need for us to be more gender responsive, and even to the investments, I think there's more need to be, as Victoria has mentioned, to be more a bit of really intentionality and really us going beyond, I think about programs that are funded, but that are incentivized, and how it's become kind of a norm that, without this kind of incentivification, it's very difficult for us to achieve gender equality in our businesses. And for me, when I listen to the companies that we're gonna listen to in a few, I think you'll see a lot of intentionality coming from the leadership, the goodwill coming from the board, the goodwill coming from, even the design of the products. And we are really hoping that even without the grant, the patient capital, these companies will still value the need of having both men and women within their leadership, the employment structures, and such. So at this time, allow me to give this floor to Lisa from Koto. And this is one of the companies that really emerges as one of the companies that's really trying their best to see how women inclusion can actually have an impact on their bottom line. Welcome, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Hi, Dale, thank you. Many thanks to ASCF for this opportunity to talk about our initiative for gender and also our results. We are very proud to be able to speak about Koto today. And I'm a bit also impressed by the number of participants. So I hope my English will be you will be able to understand my English. And so I'll start right now. Can you just go on with the presentation, please? Okay, so first of all, I'm going to present Koto. So we are a company that is making essential services accessible to underserved population. We are operating in Benin for 6 years now, in Burkina Faso for 5 years, and we just started our operation in Ivory Coast. We are selling solar home system, and in Burkina Faso, we have offices and operation in 11 regions of the country, which counts 13 regions. Unfortunately, we are not able to access the 2 remaining regions for security reasons. Our model, so we are still selling solar home system through pay-as-you-go method. So the client can pay his system for 3 years through mobile money. So the people can just pay through mobile money, and then the system automatically is automatically activated. Yes, we have 2 main type of kits. So the first one is you can show the picture. Is a basic kit, let's say, for rural communities. It allows people to have lights, radio, and phone recharging. It's payable in 1 year and very accessible to most of the people, so to vulnerable households also because of the low price. And we have the second one that you can see on the other picture with the woman. That is more, it's modular kit. So we ask the people what are the needs, and depending on the needs, we can have just lighting, or we can have a TV, we can have a fan. So we say that it's lighting, entertainment, and comfort kits payable in 3 years, and we offer free after sale for 3 years on this type of kits. Talking about gender mainstreaming initiative in our operation, so first I will explain a bit why we think it is important. So it's in our identity, let's say. It's our to promote diversity and inclusion. We all think at Koto that it is really important to have a diversity in our teams, because the variety of point of view, experiences lead to better decision. And so we are all convinced about that. Also, from a customer point of view, we think that it is really important to have women in our teams to better understand the needs of the customer. And also women are prescribers in the household. So when we are able to talk to women, they can then talk to their household and explain why it is really important to have a solar home system at home. How? So we are making demonstration specifically to women. So we have a session with women and association of women to explain them the benefit of the kits, and particularly because we also sell kits that are like, for example, you can project a football match or movies during the night, and people can pay to see the movie. So it's a kit for income generating activities. So we explain the process to women, and that's it. Also, we participate in many events to mark International Women's Rights Day. We have organized concert screening at the office. We are sponsoring women events like Maracanas, that are a football game. And we also started to include women in our flyers, in our radio spot or TV spot, to show to women that it is possible for them to have the kit and to benefit from the kit. So we also have specific promotion to encourage women to get a kit. We are setting up childcare facility in our office, and that's a new rule at Koto's office. So it allows us to have a better retention rate of our let's say female collaborators. We are celebrating International Women's Rights Day at the office, and also recruiting women and paying attention to encourage recruitment of women in our teams. Can you go on with the presentation? Thank you. So the impact of our action, so I will start with the hand. It is sometimes difficult to evaluate the impact on the performance of the business, really. I mean, to have a number of figures or to have a specific impact of this type of activities. But we just know, we are convinced that it is always really good, and people are really interested when we say that we are a company which is composed of women, and at a really important position also. And then, so for the figures that we have, in Burkina Faso, 40% of our management employees are women. So there are 10 people at the top management, and 4 of them are women. 32% of our employees are women in general. And we have to say that it's a good figure for us. We are proud of it, even if we always want to improve this number, of course. Because in Burkina Faso, we are employing a lot of technicians to install the kits. And we have to say that in the education in Burkina Faso, there are a few women that are technicians. So we are trying to equilibrate, but we are proud of this figure. Also, 11% of our contracts are registered under women names. So I have to explain this. I will talk about it in the next slide, but already I will talk about that now. When we say 11% of our clients are registered under women's names, that's no, you can go on. To buy the kit, we have to register under the name of someone who is providing us an ID. And culturally in Burkina Faso, that's more the men that are buying the kit. So that's my point here. The impact is not really reflected in the figure if we count the number of contracts in the name of women, because usually it is the man that insist also to have his name on the solar kit. But that's we are convinced that everybody in the family, in the household, is benefiting from the kit. And sometimes also it is the women that use the kit for business, but is not really reflected in our figure. And so we will try to see the impact, how the household impact. Just to finish with the figure, we are operating in Benin, and so it does not have it is not for Burkina, but our country director in Benin is a woman. Can you go back to the other slide, please? Sorry. For the lesson learned, so organizing session, except from the impact that is not really reflected that I talked before, organizing session with only women, like specifically with women, is really important, because it allows women to speak and to discuss of their situation, of their needs, and so it has been a very good activity. We recommend to other companies to try it. And 3 other points I already talked about it, so we can go on.
Lisa, if you could wrap up.
Sorry?
If you could wrap up.
Yes, can we go to the wrap up? Like the point that I say before, okay, yes. So opportunities for improvement, we are trying to continue our efforts to have gender mainstreaming activities. We are now writing and trying to apply a gender policy and action plan. So it will be implemented shortly. We decided to have training session specifically for our women employees on professional and personal development. We also have activities specifically targeted at women, because, as I said before, we realized that it was really interesting. So we decided to continue, and it will be the case always. And also we are trying to develop new products that will have beneficial impact on women. For example, we are now selling a fridge, and so we are convinced that it will help women businesses to sell drinks and everything. Sorry if I take too much time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think next time we need to, just have the whole session where we discuss just one company and the initiatives that they are making. Quite amazing work. And what I pick from your discussion for sure, and just for the rest of us, is Koto being able to go beyond counting numbers to really valuing. Just before you spoke about the numbers, you spoke about why it's very important to it's very important for us to include women, why you think women inclusion in your context, it's very important. And that's really quite amazing. We see it in your model, which is a model that has been adopted across, of course, many initiatives in renewable energy, the PAYGO model, that is quite empowering, having so many women as sales agents but also an opportunity for women economic empowerment and livelihoods. You spoke about how women are now using this opportunity to even start businesses in their own community. You also spoke about working with other partners and specifically women rights organizations, just to be able to help you do what you're not able to do in the ecosystem of inequalities as a company. Thank you so much. It's now an opportunity. I'd like to give the opportunity to Leila, to 5 minutes, Leila, just to really tell us your story. You seem to be muted, Leila.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Wonderful. So I will keep my time. I have a timer started now, so I will not be proceeding my own time. Anyway, I would like to talk about in a different way about I'm not concentrating much about the product, but I'm concentrating about what the project really bringing to Somaliland and Somaliland women and the girls, and also generally in the community. Somaliland Africa started in Somaliland 2016. We came as a private sector. We started to do the private businesses for building the solar systems to the small householders, business owners, hotels, all these kind of things. And then we have also the bigger solar. So bigger solar means about for the low income people. But it was very quickly when we realized the low income people are not really profiting about this bigger solar. The reason was their revenue are not growing, but they getting a light because they could not use the fridge, they could not use the phone charging, they could not use it. I mean, they can use phone charging, but I mean, they couldn't do nothing else. So I decided about what we can do so the lower income community, they can really benefit Solarland Africa. So that's where it come about to build the mini grids. So basically, in Somaliland, when we are talking about the rural area, 1%, the people who live in a rural area have access for electricity 1 hour to 3 hours in a nighttime, and daytime is not at all. So that's when it came to my mind about okay, I don't want to be in the cities. I'm gonna go to where the community are. And the community, it's basically where we are based on all our generation we come. So as you can see now, the villages, what we build, we look always about village where they don't really have opportunity for electricity. The villages, what we started, you can see before what it looked like. It's like those small woods where you put, gables around. And even there's a very dangerous if it's rain, the children, the animals, the elders, everybody is in danger situation. So the ball is what you see now is today. We built a mini grid. We decided about let's give opportunity for those householders to increase for a little bit the extra income. And also in the same time, it was a kind of a personal for me about go back to your community and give back in your knowledge, show about what's available for the world where we are living. So based on that, first, what you have to do when we are talking about the women and gender, Somaliland and Somalia, they come from in a different background regarding about all the African country what we have, because they're 100% Muslim people. So that means about the women, they are always one step behind the man. And this is where it come to me about how I can bring the women also in my level, in the same time also men don't feel I'm a threat to them. So we went to the community. Usually I go to meet the elder of the community, explaining for them about what Solarland Africa is bringing, what we are doing, what will be the benefit for the village, how they can see about the positive things. So when they accept it for us, the main idea for me, it is about when you want to make a change, you need to go to the source. So when you educate the source, when they understand about what you are bringing, then you are welcome for a whole community. So based on that, beside the electricity, it's giving me the opportunity to contact, and the women can come to me, the girls can come to me, I can discuss with them, they can discuss with me freely. So as you can see, the reason why I put so many pictures, it is how I really like letting them to adapt what I'm doing, and also me to adapt them to be around them and to educate them. It's about all ideas, it comes from the youth, it comes from the women, it comes from the girls, and it comes from the elder of the community also. So to giving them this opportunity for the electricity, it coming to the women, they will own it more. 85% of our customers are women who own the small businesses. So basically, the idea for starting the mini grid, it was that if, for example, like they are buying those bigger solars, or we build for the small solar for them. Basically, if anything go wrong, it's the extra cost to them. They have to maintain. If something get old, something broken, they have to spend money again. But if we run the mini grid, they can grow their own businesses. We provide the electricity. And what is so special for us is those community, we are giving for them it's a prepaid. So it's not something we're going to collect in our revenue in the backside, but we are getting as a front. Also, the opportunity of the business owners or even the householders is they don't need to really be attached to the bill, but it's gonna come. If they get $1 today, they can put it that $1, and they will use as long as what that dollar is really like a working for. It's like a prepaid. So every day when she running about her own business, she calculating her own income. By the time her electric is running down, she will get the message, or he will get the message. We have about like the 25% is our customers are male. So basically, like when the women is they done their job, they do their own sales for the daytime. At least they can afford it to still have the electricity. So we are not charging them about you pay one time for that and that's it, or we don't have any fixed rate. It's like whatever you can afford it, add it to yourself. When you get the message, please add it more. In that point, what they are benefiting, it's about that they don't have really fixed cost. It's the things what they can do as they are developing by themselves also. The other benefit what they have, for example, like at the moment their businesses are growing because they can have the fridge, they have a cold water, they have ice, they do the ice cream. Before the villages, it was like today they can have a meat, but tomorrow it's not possible because they don't have a fridge to storage or to the fridge. Today it's like the lady who make the slaughtering, any meat what left for her from the market, she put the fridge and she started selling tomorrow. Same things the milk. So everything it started about before it was giving somebody or give to the mosque, so the guys they can cook and eat by themselves, or the poor family who really don't have anything. Today, like they can give it whatever they want to, but they not must. So that is like the one benefit for all our business, and they don't need to worry about what happened to the cable, what happened to the ball, what happened to the Santa. They concentrate their businesses. Most of the benefit is that. The second one, it is about every business owner woman, we look and give it for her in a special ways. In case the difficult times, we sit with them, we see what they are doing. So we discuss with them how they save the energy to increase their sales, so they cannot really like always only buying the electric from us. So that's the one good things about the community, what we are bringing. The other things they benefiting is the security. That village was asleep in the nighttime. It's like when it comes to 6, 7 o'clock, no movement at all. Tonight, as you can see that picture, it's really like the bright. People can go outside, they can walk. The children, they can go to schools. The schools was limited. They have only the morning time. Sometimes, especially the girls, and even the women, the village have a lot of women who doesn't read, who doesn't write. So now they have the opportunity in the evening classes. So the school is offering the mothers and the elder people in the evening school because they have the electricity. So that's really like another benefit, what we bring outside. In One other things also, it is about because the religion and the culture, people really, when they don't have any role model, they don't have something what it was happening before, they started to thinking like, okay, if this lady can do the man work and success and be herself, I can do also by myself. So this is like in another way also to teaching the girls and the women, you don't have to do, or you don't have to be something what you don't want. I'm still same religion, I'm still same language, I'm still same home, and still I can do things and people are accepting me. So that also like it run beside of my education. So it's a way to educate the women and the girls, in the same time to educate the men and the boys also. When you see those young boys, the picture what we pass, it was kind of like they never see a woman wearing a trouser. So they was very surprised to talk to me, even exciting. So this is like what Solar Land Africa really does. It's a two different, it's a cultural education and then also profit support. So that's how we balance in about everything what happened. And today the 6 villages what we are making, 2 of them they are running, 2 of them I hope like end of this year it will be run, and then the rest of them we will complete. And I'm really so much about this project for the support what we get the ESENFC. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leila. If you are in an in-person meeting, I think, we'll all stand up to just really salute you for the great work that you're doing in a very fragile context. So for those who are joining us now, we are discussing about gender inclusive business and how do we ensure growth of our businesses through gender transformative approaches. As we listened from Leila, it's really not really about gender, but how are we benefiting the communities? As she spoke, you could actually see a woman that has been able to break the bias, a woman that has been able to change the perspectives of a very patriarchal society in terms of how they perceive women. And this is what we are here to learn. We are here to learn really from each other. I also believe that Leila is not really yet there, and this kind of forum is an opportunity for her to learn too. We have the last university presenting to us in Komoko, and Sarah, if you could just really take a few minutes just to talk to us about the internal structures. You may not want to go through the whole business model and all that, but if you could just focus on the internal structures that you've been able to put in place to ensure that your business is a good environment for men, women, and even the refugee in Kakuma.
Awesome. Well, again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to KKCF, AECF for hosting this panel and for putting equity and inclusion right at the front of the scope. I'm Sarah Leadham. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder at Nhomoko, and I'm based in Kigali. And we do our work because the progress of economic development across Africa isn't equal. And so every time we're talking about our business, equality and inclusion is at the forefront, because this is what we're really all about, making sure that entrepreneurs, youth, women, refugees, who are often overlooked, have the opportunity to be able to join into a thriving economy. And often where we work in refugee communities, these are very isolated communities, where the issues of displacement and inequity are even more harshly felt. So if we're not paying attention to equity, we're not doing our jobs. And in Nhomoko, we have a pretty strong track record. And for as much as we want to support equity and inclusion for our clients, we also pay attention to it within the organization. So we've served, in 10 years, we've served 60,000 entrepreneurs. We're in 22 different sites, and we've done direct investment. We often do direct investment into communities that many traditional banks or lenders would consider too risky. So we are highly risk tolerant, It's part of who we are, and it's part of what we're trying to do to make a more level playing field for people to get ahead. And I wanted to talk a little bit around how we do our operations. So these are the different steps that our organization has taken to be more gender inclusive. And honestly, not just gender inclusive, but also inclusive of refugees, Muslim clients, young people, that we really sort of push ourselves to have gone through this transformation. And I'll break all of these down in the next slide. But really, the best thing that we found to do is set a goal, set that intention. So for us at Anhomoco, we set targets around internally what we wanted to do, and also externally, right? We felt it would be way too hypocritical to say we expect to have gender equity in communities if we aren't also modeling that in our own organization. So as an organization, we've committed to being at least 50% women, but also we're two white women who founded this organization. We've also made a commitment to being run by and for Africans, that we have at least 50% leadership from Africa in our C-suite, and that we have a majority of the board is also African or refugee. So we're looking honestly at people's identities, not just in the binary of gender, right? But also people show up with multiple identities, and how do we make an inclusive space for all? So first you have to set those targets, and it's, the more meaningful you can make that target, the better. Then we also wanted to make sure that we had the right policies in place. So kind of ricocheting across the screen to the policies. People often ask us, oh, can you send me your gender policy? Well, we don't have a gender policy. We have a gender lens through all of our policies. So when it comes to new parent leave, we have very, very generous, compared to most organizations, paternity leave. What that does is it means that when I have hiring managers, I'm not hearing things anymore like, oh, well, we can't hire her. She's a woman. She's going to go on leave soon because she's going to have a baby, right? Now I have staff who are saying, okay, I've got men and women who are going to go on leave in equal measure, so I may as well hire a woman, right? So having those better policies has meant that we've been able to reach some of our targets. So we look at our policies in lots of different ways. But of course, it's not just policies, it's practices, right? We all have been in organizations where things are written down, but in the reality, there's hypocrisy. So for us, really kind of building in that right culture of diversity, inclusion, that's really critical for us. So we talk all the time around equity, diversity, and inclusion. We make sure that all of our materials promote women, all of our approaches really kind of have all of those different inclusive elements.
And then Sarah, could you just, as you wrap up, could you just, looking at all these measures that you've been able to put in place, if you could just, tell us how has been the impact of all these measures on your bottom line? I really don't just mean profitability, but really on different aspects of growth and performance of your business.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think that's where that last piece on performance is really critical. So not only do we do all of these things, but we actually want to see what the impact is on the organization. So for us, it's meant that we are able to retain women in top positions in the organization. So we're decreasing our turnover, particularly for women employees, that we're able to work in communities where other people aren't able to access because we have inclusive approaches. So when COVID happened, we had hired refugees who were in community already. And so when there was economic lockdowns, we were already embedded in communities. Similarly, we work in Muslim communities. That's really important for women to be able to speak honestly and openly about their finances with other women. So there's not any kind of friction there. So we're actually able to deliver much better services, more relevant services, and decrease our operating costs because we hire representative communities, including women. So I'm looking forward to the conversation to come, and I'll stop there. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And even as we transit to the panel discussion, I think we'll be very happy to hear their perspective, especially, as you speak about the measures that you put in place in terms of really the impact these measures have had on your business, and not really just profitability, but it's of retaining staff. And the big question is who is taking care of these costs? Because I know there are people who will be joining here and they're just thinking, so what's really the cost of sending a male staff on paternity leave? What's the cost, of having all these women going on maternity and all this? Who is taking care of that? So the issue of costs and gender mainstreaming has been a big question. And I'm very happy that you already mentioned that, inclusivity and equality has actually reduced your operational costs. Thank you so much. Friends, at this time, we want to transit to the panel discussion. Yeah. And I'd like to ask all my panelists to put on their videos. We'll have them introduce themselves, and we'll have them really share their perspectives on what we're observing in this business, what we are hearing from this business really mean in terms of really what's happening in the global markets, in the financing market, in the investments market. To begin with, I would like to ask Joy to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm so glad. That was such a wonderful set of presentations. My name is Joy Anderson. I lead an organization called Criterion Institute. We're a nonprofit think tank that works globally to demystify finance and have more people see themselves as able to use finance to create social change. Do you want us to go farther, Jael, now, or just
No, thank you. Let's, Andrea, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon or good morning, wherever people are dialing in from. My name is Andrea Chakava. I'm the investment director of the Gresham Michelle Trust, but I'm also a fund manager. So we are raising a gender lens investment fund called Afrishella that is really focused on investing with the gender and climate intersection. I also have other hats. I sit on the board of 2X Global, and I also chair the Investment Advisory Council for Canada's Equality Fund, amongst other local representation. So happy to be here. Yes.
Thank you, Andrea. The floor is yours, Alex.
Thank you so much, Jael, and hello everyone. My name is Alex Area. I come from a small city in Uganda called Lira, well known for female households producing and supplying the entire nation with grain. So I've been a banker for the past 20 years with experience in SME financing, corporate finance, working with major commercial banks and DFIs in sub-Saharan Africa. Currently, I'm the Southern African Regional Lead for the African Development Bank's Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa program, whose acronym is AFAWA, and I'm based in Pretoria, South Africa. I'm tasked with implementing the AFAWA program pillars in the Southern African region. And over the last 3 years, I've actively engaged with financial institutions, government institutions, business development firms like GMT and AECF to overcome the funding gap for women businesses. I'm very grateful to the AECF for inviting me to this plenary session, and I look forward to productive conversations on this important topic of gender lens investment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are very excited to have the three of you, I think coming from very diverse background with a very diverse focus. Joy, who believes that let's fix the capital and not the company, and I'm sure companies represented here would be very happy to listen to Joy. For her, she really believes that, let's really work with the investors. And Andia, who have worked with companies, implementing, seeing all these challenges, seeing all these opportunities. I'm very happy to hear from you in a few, Andia. Alex, as he mentioned, coming from a DFI, African Development Bank, and he'll speak to us really what it really, how is the investments looking like from really an investor point of view. So welcome, the three of you, and go straight to our first question. We've talked about gender lens investing. Of course, we've come from a long journey of women economic empowerment, livelihoods, and really philanthropy. And now it's really speaking about gender lens investing. And having been in this market for a long time, Joy, what are you observing? What is shifting? How do we need to position ourselves as businesses represented here? And could you also just have a word for the investors, represented here too?
Yeah. Well, as I listened to the entrepreneurs talk, it was such a clear and compelling reason why we have to have gender lens investing. We have to, because without a gender lens, investors won't see you right. They won't ask the right questions of entrepreneurs. They'll skip the nuance, Leila, that you've got in how you think about your business and your market. They'll skip it. They won't hear it. They won't see it. They'll discount it. And so I think there's a critical moment here. What I heard in these stories, so important, is that gender is a lens. It's not a screen. We think too often about it as a screen to say women, not men. But no. That's not what all of you were talking about. Was understanding how gender works in your markets, in your context, and then figuring out how to run businesses. Okay, the reality is everybody should be doing that. There's no businesses where there isn't a gender dimension to what's happening in the market. There's no company where there's not a gender part of, as Sarah, you said, how we look at running our businesses. So the first point is really making sure you made such a compelling case that gender is a lens, not a screen. It's a form of analysis. And that's what I love about finance. Finance is about, when it's done well, good analysis. And so a gender lens should improve the analysis of an investor. And I think it's really important for us to remember that this is about how the company operates, how it treats its workers, the leadership, its governance, its board, but it's also about understanding the markets in which they work. Sort of the description that you had of the Lisa of the energy market. You have to understand the gender dimensions of the market. So just two more quick points. What I also heard in your presentations that is so important is analyzing power, not just identity, not just finding women, but analyzing power. And so then the final point I want to make is, as we analyze power, we need to recognize that investors have lots of power. And the dynamics between investors and companies often pushes companies potentially to do things that aren't right for them. And so Giles said the slogan that Criterion often chants is, let's fix the capital before we go out and fix companies. Let's make sure that we have appropriate capital for the kind of amazing work that companies are moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joy, from that really perspective. And just your last point on, investors have power, and I was just wondering for how long shall we, comply to the investors instead of really building our, internal institutional structures to ensure that we are just behaving well in terms of including men and women. Probably, Alex, you want to connect to what Joy mentioned. Joy will have another opportunity again just to really share more on that. But at this point, Alex, do you want to connect? You're an investor for sovereign programs for a long time, but then recently a lot of focus on, private sector companies. What are you observing? What are you observing in terms of, how is just the space shifting so that the companies can be able to align, but also investors can be able to align from your experiences?
Thank you, JL. And I think from my experience and my opinion, they won't differ from what Joy just mentioned. There have been several emerging trends, market experiences that we've observed in the gender lens investing space. Firstly, there's been a significant increase in capital flows towards genderless investing as more development financial institutions like ours, development partners and impact investors recognize the potential for not only financial returns, but social returns when you invest with the gender lens perspective. And from our initiative, the AFAWA initiative, I can mention that by the end of 2022 or mid-January, we had reached a landmark of over $1 billion in approved funding for financial institutions to increase access to finance for women entrepreneurs. And we've also supported equity funds that have secured over $100 million in funding to support women-owned and led businesses. And this is in addition to other actors that are in the financial space with the intentionality of gender-lens financing. The other observation is it has evolved. Gender-less investing has evolved from primarily supporting women businesses to now encompassing broader gender-related issues. Investors are now increasingly focused on gender diversity in leadership, workplace equality, innovation for gender empowerment, and products and services that can address gender-specific challenges. We've seen investors and development finance institutions incorporating gender-related metrics into their due diligence practices and demanding gender disaggregated data, which allows for analysis and benchmarking of gender-related performance, so that ultimately companies that can demonstrate gender diversity in their workforce, leadership positions, and supply chains are able to attract capital. The other observations we've also seen is that recent studies report that companies that have gender diversity in leadership have always proved to have better financial performance. And we realize that organizations that are better equipped to serve a variety of clients utilize their talent effectively and spur innovation. So for the second part of your question, where you say, how can companies align themselves to these trends that we are observing? I think it's very important to go beyond just having gender inclusive policies. Just like Sarah mentioned, we should have a gender culture in our organizations. And this includes initiatives like fair hiring practices, equal pay, career development initiatives for women. And private companies can now start setting specific targets for gender diversity in their workforce. The other recommendation is encouraging supplier diversity. Companies can support gender inclusivity in their supply chains by actively seeking out women businesses as suppliers. This will create economic opportunities for women entrepreneurs and also help close gender gaps in traditionally male-dominated industries. And the other, and this really refers to the banking and non-banking financial institutions who we deal with. It's very important to invest in women enterprises. These financial institutions should start allocating resources towards investing in women businesses and providing them the much needed capital and non-financial support for growth. This not only promotes gender equality, but also unlocks commercial potential in the women's market and encourages innovation. So I will stop here, and over to you, Jaya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex. And as Andia comes in, and Andia is an implementer working with who has worked with a lot of these businesses, and some of these things that we are speaking about. She being an entrepreneur herself, she's seen them, she's done them. And so Andia, as you come in, just to speak about what you're observing in the market, among the companies. I will also be interested to hear, but also to speak to participant, and just let's answer the question, why women? When I look at the 2X criteria, the benchmark, it's really all about how many women are we bringing on board. And of course, I heard what Alex mentioned when he said that it's really not just really about gender, women and men representation, but it's really about issues. I don't know whether Alex meant that whether even if we have one man on the board, one woman on the board of 8, as long as there's a lot of men and women issues are being addressed. Just speak to that, being a journalist, investing expert in the sector. Welcome, Andia.
Yeah, thank you, and happy to be here. Just to go on a few points about the trends I'm seeing, and making sure that I'm not being repetitive. I feel like the market in some way has recognized that there is potential with women entrepreneurs. So what we're seeing a lot of is calls for female-only cohorts. I think as we speak now, IFC has a call out there for She Wins Africa. Grash Michelle Trust has a Women Creating Africa that's been scaled. And of course, both Grash Michelle Trust and African Enterprise Fund were recipients of a FAWA's enabling program for institutions like us that support the capacity of women. And as we go out and we recruit all these entrepreneurs and bring them in our programs, because till today, businesses still say one of their biggest challenges really ranges from access to finance to access to market. So that still remains the biggest challenge today. And what we need to do when we attract these cohorts, we need to make sure we're not just over-mentoring women, but still leaving them underfunded. So we cannot just keep it as a capacity building activity, because we're not taking the male entrepreneurs through this process, but they're still getting more funding than women entrepreneurs. So we're basically asking that these programs from the very beginning, as they're co-designed with the funders, just as AFDB has done and IFC has done, there is a pot of money there, and there's pot of money for mobilization and sensitization, so that there is an actual pool of money that the women can basically tap into. And which pools of money are we talking about? I think we can go to the other trend, which is the fact that we have sustainable development goals, that there's an urgency to basically to fulfill those goals. And when people look through all the goals, there is evidence that if you do touch on gender equality goal 5, you can capture no poverty, no hunger, good health, clean. You can hit so many goals with that, reduced inequalities. Just as the women that have presented today have demonstrated just a basic appreciation of what it means to impact a woman in that particular economy. But what it does mean is that the capital that flows needs to be blended. It has to have a combination of both philanthropic and concessional capital, and it also needs to be commercial. So what does that mean? It means that the investment community has to work together. And I say this because we're fundraising for a blended vehicle, and it's really complicated because you go from one part to the other. And sometimes a lot of entrepreneurs need both things. They need some grant capital. They also need some commercial capital, but that commercial capital probably needs to be a little bit more patient or structured before they can go straight into the traditional loan and bank. So I think the main thing is there's this push to basically have the capital speak to the needs of this particular group, which we're seeing is very actively represented by women. I think also when we look at where are the flows flowing in the continent and where is a lot of the money going, you'll find that there's a lot of money in Africa flowing to infrastructure projects. There's a lot of money flowing when it comes to resources, whether it's mining. There's a lot of money flowing to technology, and there's a lot of money now flowing to renewable energy. Those are traditionally male-dominated sectors, and there has to be a way of basically uplifting and bringing up and encouraging new players of women within these particular sectors. So what we've traditionally done at the Trust when we look at this is that we've been able to create networks of sectors that we feel are unrepresented or not necessarily, or these sectors don't necessarily have a lot of women to improve their agency. So the call there is for institutions in the private sector that are very well established in these particular sectors to have that cohort or that lens of how can they lift and bring up women. And we're seeing this happen across with some players basically saying that they will now be responsible for a cohort in a particular area that they have a key interest in. I think we're seeing an opportunity around emerging fund managers. And these managers, like myself, you're not traditional, you're not coming off a large private equity firm, you're basically solving grassroots problems, but there's still a problem of capital because the money that is being raised for these fund managers are considered small in relation to what people usually deploy. So basically people have minimum ticket sizes, and Alex, you can correct me if your minimum ticket size in a fund might be 10 or 15 million dollars, which might be different if the fund is only raising 20 or 30 million dollars to cater for entrepreneurs that need $100,000 check. So how do we basically plug that back where we can create intermediaries who are closer to the problem and have organic relationships with some of these entrepreneurs on the ground to basically fund these initiatives? So these are some of the things that I'm seeing. I think there's more to talk about, but I think these are the areas that I'll highlight in terms of areas that we can basically go deeper. And I think the last I'll put through is we've been talking about investing in women for a while now. In fact, to the extent that people think it's no longer an issue. But when we drill down and we say transparency and accountability, we see that people are not giving us data. I was very impressed with the businesses that were pitching. They were actually giving us the numbers of the women they've targeted, who they've reached. It's very difficult to get that information. And studies have shown just by having women on the boards does not mean that you actually have fair policies across the workforce. So what we want to see is more transparency across the whole sector. And what does that transparency mean? It could mean certification. It could be membership to certain global bodies like 2X Global. It could be impact reports that are measuring things and doing this on a periodic basis. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andia. And I would like Joy to respond to some of the issues that you've mentioned. You mentioned that there's more capital in infrastructure, there's more capital in renewable energy. These are sectors that are really male-dominated, and I think it will take us really a long time to be able to ensure they are more inclusive, looking at our education backgrounds and all that. We know that women are more in the health sector. Women are more in the education. Women are more in the care work, in the hospitality industries. So what language do we need to send to the investors, you know, because without this kind of shift, it might be difficult for us to realize gender equality.
Yeah, such a good question. Can I come back to that? I just want to build first on something that Andy was talking about that just seems so central to what we're talking about, and it probably answers the question you're asking as well. What I heard Andia talking about is the importance of collaboration, right? We're not, finance is a team sport, right? Business is a team sport. None of us do this alone. You don't found a business alone. You found a business and then you go out and find customers and you have co-founders. But so often it seems like we're seeing it as one-to-one or us against them. And it is actually rigged, right? The system, I mean, we don't have to sugarcoat this on this kind of a call. The system's actually rigged against women and many other people, right? The whole system is arguably rigged against Africa. I mean, there's a place that sort of says it's not designed to work. The system has not been designed to work for those who have been historically and intentionally left out of the system. I mean, it's just an obvious statement. And so when we sort of turn around and say, well, how do we have to be making it work. And to do that, to address issues of power, we have to collaborate with each other, because the only way, and that's why things like that Andia named, of things like 2X and others, are so important. Even having a field of gender lens investing where we can knit things together, use our collective power to call the questions, because in the end, investors should be allies, right? That's the idea behind it, right? You should be an ally for the businesses that you're investing in. You should be willing to use your power. And so I think some of these questions really come down to when we're involved in one-on-one company picking and not looking at an overall sector like energy, or looking at a sector like agriculture or infrastructure. It's looking at some of those more the sort of broader lenses, a market lens that lets you see opportunities. And one of the things that we've learned in our research, and we've been working in the field of gender lens investing since there was a field of gender lens investing, putting out research that helps investors move their capital. And Jael, part of what we've figured out is that you have to be specific about the sector. Gender is not gender the same across. You have to start with, what are the patterns within infrastructure? What are the patterns within agriculture? How do we really look specifically? Because the clearer our gender lens can be, a clearer gender lens comes from context and specificity. Generalities, Andia, as you said, all women on boards do all, it's just not true. It's not the same. Not all women on all boards act the same way. And so we have to be specific, and we have to be willing to use our own power and to borrow power from others.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. That really answers a lot of questions, I'm sure, even across the participation. And for those of us who are joining in also, we are really speaking about gender inclusive businesses and how do we accelerate our business growth, our business performance through gender transformative approaches. Alex, allow me to come back to you. You largely spoke about what really, what you're observing in the market, in the bank and beyond the bank. Probably could you now really maybe narrow down to some of the initiatives within the bank that you have been able to come up with in the pursuit of gender equity within the investment portfolios?
Thanks, Jael. Just before I can share the initiatives that the African Development Bank is currently running with to promote gender equality and women's economic empowerment, I think it's important to mention that when we talk of large infrastructure projects in energy, in industry, or transport, there's that bias that these are male-dominated sectors, and I think that's a myth. The fact is that at the African Development Bank, we take advantage of use of data in designing our projects and ensuring that communities in particular project areas benefit from some of these large infrastructure projects that have been termed male-dominated. But talking about initiatives, it brings me to an interesting program that I'm rolling out in Southern Africa, together with my colleagues in different regions, and this is the AFAWA initiative. And for us, this is a game changer on the continent, given its holistic approach of tackling the market inefficiencies constraining women businesses from accessing finance. So the AFAWA initiative is modeled around 3 pillars of improving access to finance, providing technical assistance, and promoting a conducive enabling environment for women businesses to thrive. So following we started our implementation in 2021, and I can say we are on a progressive and transformational journey to unlock $5 billion by 2026, $5 billion by 2026 in funding to women SMEs. And on the supply side of the market spectrum, we are de-risking lending to women SMEs, working in partnership with the Africa Guarantee Fund, which is providing guarantees to financial institutions to unlock funding for women SMEs and also address some of the constraints that women enterprises face in accessing funding, like collateral challenges. We also leveraging our instruments of lines of credit, senior debt, equity, guarantees to ensure that there's a proportionate carve-out that is geared towards financing women enterprises. We provide technical support in terms of grant funding to financial institutions to support product development, staff capacity building, policy improvement in their lending processes. And we also support the creation of robust tracking and monitoring and evaluation mechanisms to support reporting and decision-making. And on the demand side of the market, we are providing technical assistance to women entrepreneurs in partnership with BDS firms like yourselves, Grace Michelle Trust, and also establishing hubs within financial institutions that can provide training to women SMEs covering financial literacy, business management skills, mentorship and networking skills to improve on their bankability, access to markets, and their productivity. On the regulatory front, we have several initiatives that are running. For example, we're working with relevant stakeholders to facilitate women businesses transition from the informal to formal sector, because this is the biggest challenge that we're seeing in the women's market landscape. The number of women businesses, but most of them are operating in informal settings. And then we're working with stakeholders to ensure that we can transition them to the formal sector and benefit. Yeah. And we've also partnered with the Alliance for Financial Inclusion to accelerate financial inclusion through policy reforms, working with 20 African countries in developing gender-responsive policies and regulations for women SMEs to access finance. Thank you.
Alex, we are very excited and very happy to partner with you, even on the AFAWA program, and thank you so much for your support. Probably you mentioned about looking at this on the policy improvements. Probably if you could just give some brief on that in terms of what policies are you working on at the regional, probably, and maybe at national level, just so that we can also track them.
Yeah, so I can mention three areas in which we were looking at reforms. First is, the market is full of traditional financial institutions that have already systems of risk management ways of assessing applicants or borrowers for finance, and there are no alternative sources of credit. We don't have market development initiatives like your deep-end capital markets or VCs or your PEs that can come in and support or provide alternative sources of credit to women SMEs. And those that exist, we'll always look at maybe your large ticket size that somehow find that excludes some of the women businesses in accessing. So working with central banks, we're looking at ways how we can, in which we can have more market development initiatives that can provide alternative sources of funding for the women SMEs. We're also looking at improved prudential guidelines. The financial industry is highly regulated. I mean, sometimes, but they will have to cherry pick who they have to lend to because of the regulations that they have to adhere to or comply to. So working with regulators, we can design reforms that can support the underserved in improving access to finance. And also we want to work with other government bodies in coming up with direct monetary interventions in form of risk-sharing facilities and support to the financial sector in increasing access to the underserved women and youth enterprises on the continent.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those highlights. I think it's very important, even at the country's level, for us to be able to track those kind of policies and also align with them. And before I come to your question, there's a question from the participants, and Katia from Mali is asking, how do we get access to funding as women entrepreneurs working on business integrated to gender? I don't know that's very clear. Yeah.
Sorry, just repeat the last half of the question.
Yeah, how do we get access to funding as women entrepreneurs working on businesses integrated to gender?
So do I take that with
Like
my points on effective?
You can take that, and then afterwards, I think it would be very interesting for you to be able, I know you already started that conversation on what approaches have you found particularly effective in fostering inclusivity within the private sector companies.
Yeah, I think I'll take that question first, and then I'll come to the specific aspect. I think in terms of effective approaches, and I'm just talking about what we've practically done and what we've seen done, is that, and Joy talked about it, we basically have to use our influence to share power. So if we are the ones that have access to entities that are, we can host a webinar like this and they can come, then we give the entrepreneurs that power to be seen and to be heard. What we've done, though, is created a distinction between when there's a need for access to finance and when there's a need for access to markets. So to access to markets, we've been very specific, where we basically formed a relationship with a Nordic group. They're called FemInvest. And we basically matched entrepreneurs that were very similar. And there's a big push towards a climate change, people not eating meat, all of that healthy. And a lot of our entrepreneurs in our network were doing dried foods, were already doing some form of agri-product that was looking for that particular market. So this was an opportunity to basically say, can there be some trade that is facilitated? That doesn't only need to happen with the Nordic countries, it can also happen across Africa on a Pan-African platform like this, where these are now women entrepreneurs that have basically used their buying power, where they've been already accepted into supermarkets across town and have invited those supermarkets now to be the ones that would select the products that would come to the shelf. And then you realize after that happens, you then have to deal with a problem of access to finance. So we come back to the access to finance problem that we have to solve. I think I want to be whilst I accept there's there's work happening with the development finance community, I think we need to acknowledge across the board there is a market failure because we don't have the financing that needs to go to what we call the missing middle. And if I just go to clarify what we mean by the missing middle, we're basically saying these are not businesses that are going to be able to borrow from the fintech solutions that are being celebrated to have brought in a lot of female financial inclusion. Some of those products are priced at 1% a day. So they favor the person that is going in the morning to buy, to get their goods and to sell them at the end of the day, or maybe a border person where you can afford a weekly interest rate or daily interest rate. These are businesses that need capital that is a little bit more patient. So the fintech solutions will so not really work with you. We're also talking about grant making processes now that have been put to the level that you need to have almost an MBA to apply for it. We've set the bar so high, and these are grant mechanisms. So one of the key things that we're doing is saying, and we touched on it, and Alex touched on it when he said different kinds of how do you assess risk? And we're actually in a project where we're saying, how do you assess a woman entrepreneur that has no collateral? She's not going, even if she owns land, yet we know like 10% of African women own land. They're not going to mortgage it. They're not going to put their family at risk. We lost our family home, and I was shocked, and it was like, oh, Dad, you mortgaged the house. I didn't know. The women are not going to do it. So it's got no collateral that you're talking about that. And we're also talking about a different sense where you're actually looking at areas where you're saying the track record is limited. So some of us have been able to work in a corporate environment and graduate into entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurs today are are going straight from school, if they make it to school, or maybe not even school, into entrepreneurship. What kind of track record is actually going to guard that? And I think Endeavor just put out a report to say, what does a unicorn founder look like? And surprise, surprise, it didn't say they went to an Ivy League school. So we have to be able to look at what is this credit assessment and basically say, this is how we're going to predict risk. Are we going to rely on some level of psychometric tests as well? These are things that we're co-creating with a community of collaborative alternative service providers. The other way I've seen, and it's something that I also want to say to private sector players that are looking to integrate women, is that work with the networks that already exist. And I think this is where, the African Development Bank has been really good. We've been engaging with them for so long. But different players, they tend to basically say, we will go out and we'll do our own research. We will go out and find the problem. Women are in networks, and the networks have always been there. So I think it's the job as players to integrate within those networks and to form solutions that work, that are very, very particular for that community. We ended up doing this for a project we had with Absa Bank during the COVID time, where we basically worked with them to design a COVID response a program, and that led to them actually creating a product that was based on what people shared. And a lot of the people that came to seminars were not existing clients. They were people that actually wanted to learn. So I think one thing is to note that women are already outside the financial system. So the advice has to be collected, not from existing clients, but from the market. And when we get feedback from the market, I think it's important for us to co-create and come back to the market and to show the market what we've done. Because if you ask also women today, they'll say, oh, I filled in this survey, I filled in this research, we didn't see what happened. I think the results need to show in the numbers, and the numbers are still showing that very little capital is flowing on an aggregate basis to women-owned and founded enterprises, and capital is not flowing to businesses, to funds that are basically led and managed by women. And why are we supporting such funds? Because we know that some decision-making is subjective. We know that there is bias. So what we're saying is that let's be obvious with the bias and say, let people invest in the networks they know. Women have talked about being prejudiced when they pitch when they're pregnant. people not perceiving that they have the ability to carry on with the work. I think one of the entrepreneurs touched on this. So these are real issues. There are discussions right now happening in the office about effects of menopause. We're not used to talking about that, but these are topical issues that are happening today. So to me, an effective approach is basically working heart to heart with people that are close to that problem and channeling the solution, basically shifting power and saying, how can we work together to make this happen, rather than assuming or expecting things to change by still holding on to the traditional forms of power.
Thanks, Andrea. And what I hear a lot from you as you spoke, it's really about participation and involvement, and thank you so much. And there are so many terms that you've used, Andrea, and I'm sure there are so many people who may not be able to understand this. And I would just like you to take maybe 1 minute just to, when you say capital is patient, what do you mean?
Sorry, I mean that you have a grace period. So you can structure the capital in a way that you can say this is capital that needs to be paid back after a year. It is capital that needs to be paid back after 3 years. I actually talked to a fund that said, oh, we're actually expecting this capital to be paid back after 10 years. Now, it's very difficult from a traditional banking perspective to basically structure something like that unless you're talking about a mortgage. And even then, if you see the stats of who actually takes up a mortgage, they're very, very low. What we're talking about, these kind of structures being there for seasonal sectors, like what we say in agriculture, for instance, that basically has sort of been relegated to sort of a cooperative or very specialized finance area. How can we basically make that capital more patient so that we can allow the businesses that are just on an early growth stage that time to basically grow? And what are the mechanisms we're using in between to make sure that you can get your capital back? Because at the same time, I think we don't want to say we're doing this and then there's a lot of people that actually don't meet their obligation. So it's structuring the capital in a way that people are able to pay back according to their business and how their cycles of their business. And I was just using agriculture because that's where we get a lot of complaints, but it also happens on a trade. Even people that are trading there's a cycle. And sometimes you find that some businesses actually don't meet that commitment simply because the capital was not patient, and they find that they're already auctioned and they tend to lose their assets because of that.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And even as we almost come to the close of the discussion, I will go back to Joy. Joy, I've listened to some of your podcasts where you're really passionate about, moving away from just counting, and you reiterated that in one of your statements when you talked about, it's really not about having one woman or 4 women on the board. And Joy, I would like you just to speak to us and help us understand, when we talk about matrices for gender equality in investments, what are we looking? What should we look for that is more transformative?
Yeah. Well, I just so Andy and I keep coming back on this word power, because that's what it's about in the end, right? We have to look at the way we get to transformative change is by changing power dynamics. It's that simple. The power dynamics right now are rigged, and we need to shift them so they're not. And, I think we can, even as you said, Andrea, that as we're putting capital to women, and somebody can celebrate that they moved capital to women at 1% daily, how much anybody who wants access to that capital should have access to it, but it's not appropriate for most businesses, right? You have to be a very particular kind of business. One of the things that I've been thinking about during this time is we're part of the design of a new investment vehicle. And I think how we design investment vehicles, how fund managers think through the structures, the terms, the relationships within the capital is really critical, and paying attention to those power dynamics and how we can use finance to disrupt power dynamics. So we've been designing an investment vehicle that's not currently in Africa, but it's in the Pacific Islands, but it's relevant to so many places. And instead of financing individual businesses and their operations, we're financing their ability to own infrastructure in agriculture. So these are smallholder farmers, and they can't have the sort of, Andy talked about that connection between access to markets, able to participate in markets, and my ability to have funding within my own business. There are ways that we need to be connecting those together, because part of the reason that women entrepreneurs desperately need capital is because it's so hard for them to work in the markets. And so if we actually could shift the power dynamics in the supply chains and in how the markets works, and there's roles for finance within that. And I know AECF looks at this a lot of sort of how do the supply chains themselves work? So we need to look at this from all different angles and not get stuck that gender lens investing is ticking a box on one thing. It's a lens, as all of these entrepreneurs showed so clearly, it's a lens that sees the complexity of the market in which they're working and how can capital be used to disrupt those power dynamics.
Yeah.
That's transformation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joy. It's really, when you talk about power dynamics, sometimes, it's been used a lot and it's really a big word, but when you really narrowed it down to really how do we use finance to shift the position of women and the role of the women in the society, and of course, investors like FDB, where Alex is best, have a lot of power in really doing this and really helping us to shift that power using the finance. Thank you so much. So as we come to the close, Alex, I would like you to give an advice to the companies and investees or entrepreneurs that are on this platform in terms of how can they effectively integrate gender consideration. I know a lot has been spoken, but then you may want to add a word or two.
Yeah, sure, Jael. A lot has been shared, and I'm sure the investors and the people on this forum have picked some ideas. But I will add, I think firstly, it's important for organizations to recognize that gender considerations are crucial for sustainable development and long-term business success. Yeah, so organizations should understand the business case for gender equality, including its profitability, and then access to new markets and customers. I would encourage all of you to reach out to the AFDB and other development partners that are prioritizing gender equality and have experience in integrating gender considerations into their business operations. And at the FDB, I'm proud to say we have regional gender and FAO experts, and we encourage you to seek guidance from our expertise, who can provide you with the technical support in utilizing existing tools and networks to enhance your gender strategy. It's also important to collaborate with our existing stakeholders in the women's economic empowerment space. The FDB today has a cohort of about 10 business development firms across Africa that are running innovative programs in 26 African countries geared towards access to finance and non-financial resources. We have development partners like the Africa Guarantee Fund, private equity funds, and civil society organizations where you can harness best practices, foster partnerships, and contribute collectively to efforts in advancing gender equality. So I'll stop here, Jael, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Andy, your parting shot to the companies that are represented here.
My parting shot is that everybody should just start where they are. I think the main thing is to do a baseline be transparent with what you see. I've had conversations with companies and I've said, show me, especially the ones that seem to be doing well in very exterior stuff where their board is looking very diverse. But when you start asking questions about gender pay gap, you start asking, questions about procurement percentages, which our government is quite transparent on, there's hesitation with the data. And I think what I'm saying is that data is your friend because it's a baseline of where you are. You can be transparent of this is where we are, and then you can set a realistic target about where you want to be. And I say realistic because it's going to differ per country, per company. It's going to be based on the resources. It's going to be based on the sector, because some of these industries, you have to rectify the problem by basically building the pipeline that you need to basically generate inclusivity. I think it's also important for companies to just do unconscious bias training. And these are things that happen both for male and female. We've been reconditioned from a very, very long time that these are certain traditional roles or these are areas that we should not do. So I don't think we should take it for granted, or we should automatically assume that it's going to be second nature for people to appreciate integrating and bringing on gender on board. And I think I would like to say that it needs to start at the top. Sometimes we see it's relegated to the marketing department, or it's in HR, or it's in impact offices, but it really starts at the leadership level. It's a strategy level, and there are interplays. There's an intersection with many things. There's an intersection with staff morale. There's an intersection with culture. There's an intersection with a whole aspect of cohesiveness, and they shouldn't be any hesitation with working with a partner. So sometimes people see that we're the Gracia Michelle Trust and we should know, but we work with partners. We still work with people. We still bring on gender experts. We still work with women networks, because at the end of the day, they are complex things. And I think one of the dangers we can do is assume that women are homogeneous. Quite different. There are very many different aspects that people are tackling, and very many different nuances that need to be understood. And I think one of the key things I'll just say is that with every product and service that is being delivered, and each company has this, you can look at it and say, is my product basically adding to the impact, or is it solving a problem and making it easier and more accessible and better for basically people to either use that product, or for people to basically feel that the product is speaking to them. As we speak now, a lot of people see the female segment as consumers, but not necessarily decision makers. And how do we sort of shift that mindset? How do we also make sure that we have products that are helping the livelihood of women, not really livelihood, but they're basically impacting and making it more efficient, whether it's biodegradable pads that you're using during periods, whether it is, we've had businesses that are generating just many women work in the service sector and they have tips, but that tip is not considered as part of their income. But now there's actually an app that you can record those tips so that you can build people's credit history. If we know there's lots of women in retail trade, getting that access, that credit history that somebody can use to basically go later and to get a loan. So what we're saying is that all these things are integrated. How can we work together to make sure that we can solve these problems? Because as Joyce said, we need a lot of collaboration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we actually, all of us are listening, and I really like this participation because I see since we began, there are people who've been constantly, listening. Very few people have actually dropped off, meaning that this is very interesting conversation. I'm not seeing a lot of questions, meaning that maybe the discussion is quite clear. And so, Joy, I know you work a lot as a think tank and shaping the investments, but at this time, I think I would like to ask you, what are the secrets you'd like to, give to the investees, to the companies represented here?
What are the secrets? I some magic.
Yeah.
Oof. I guess two things. One is learn the language. I think lots of people don't, and women in particular, don't feel comfortable with the language of finance. And so I was a high school teacher. I don't have an MBA. I came into this, I founded a venture fund, and I've done lots of stuff in finance. But what became really important, because language is power, and being able to hear when you're being dismissed and know, and figure out how to reframe and respond and say, because I think being able to respond in the language of finance to say, well, I understand that your assessment of the material risks in my business is blah, blah, but I'd like to reframe them as this. And you learning the language, even if it's just memorizing some of the terms and feeding them back. Finance is a performance. And that's annoying, but it's true. And so figuring out how to navigate those power dynamics is also about figuring out how to navigate that performance. And I wish that wasn't true, but at some point it is. And so on our website, we actually have something we call Toolkit, which is it's like a 250 cards that define finance. Or a lot of the stuff I do on my podcast is just trying to talk about how finance works, listening and leaning in and not being afraid of it, because it's not rocket science. They're not so bright. They just do the same things over and over again. So just, lean in, figure out what the language is. I guess that's my secret sauce, because it is a secret and they're trying to keep it secret, right? They make it so complicated, but you can see through it because you're smarter.
Thank you so much, Joy, and thank you, Andia and Alex, for those insights. Really spending your time just to speak to us. And thank you, Lisa, Leila, and Sarah, for really opening your businesses just for us to use them as a learning point. As we come to the close, before I welcome my colleague to give a vote of thanks, I'm very grateful, and I've learned a lot personally. And just to also to encourage all of us, that is Alex mentioned, is that there's a lot of support within the ecosystem, and we are open. I know those of us who've received this link to join this forum, and you're just wondering, how do I go about it? We are quite open in terms of really supporting. Please reach out. Let's have a conversation on how we can grow together. We are not looking at really, we are really looking to grow together, because we know it's going to be a journey, and the journey is not ending tomorrow. As ACF, we are also putting in place, we have a learning academy, and especially those businesses that are still at starting level, we have an opportunity for you to go through a whole series of support in terms of training, and that training for sure includes how can we be more gender inclusive even as a business grow. We have a whole team of people at ACF also that really supports businesses, and we're happy to grow together. I really love what Andia said in terms of collaboration. We are at a level where we are also collaborating, including with women rights organizations across the countries that we are working in, and we're very happy to really network. Recently, joining the 2X global discussions, just to be able to know how do we need to shape our language to influence finance, to be able to work for the women. Allow me at this point to welcome my colleague, Judy, to give a vote of thanks, but it's been very insightful interacting with each one of you.
Thank you, Jael. Thank you, Jael, for the opportunity. I believe I gained insights, and as we draw to the end, on behalf of the ACF, I would like to extend my gratitude to every one of you. that have made today webinar success. Special gratitude to our speakers and the panelists for sharing your insights, and your passion for gender inclusion has really enriched the discussions. And I believe each one of us is inspired on the importance of gender inclusivity as part of the principle guiding to our businesses. Thank you, our participants, for your patience, for your engagement and your presence. You have encouraged us, and we know that by your support, we can stay motivated to keep supporting you more and to ensure that your businesses are thriving. And finally, I would like to say that let us keep in mind that gender inclusivity is not just a one-time effort, but it's a journey that we are all in. It requires commitment, and it requires continuous assessment. And it involves all of us, from the investors to us, the partners, and also the investees. So together we can work out and ensure that our businesses are gender inclusive, and we are making impact to the communities where we are operating. Once again, I would like to thank you, and I look forward to continued collaborations and working together towards our shared vision. Thank you, and have a nice evening and enjoy your weekends.
Happy weekend. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Really appreciate all the comments shared today. Take care.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see you all off and listening to you. Thanks for the advice, and have a nice weekend.